You don't know his name until after he's dead. That's the first thing nobody tells you about operations like this. You don't go in knowing exactly who you're going after, not because your commanders don't trust you, but because the less you know, the less you can accidentally leak. So what you know going into Tapalpa on Sunday morning is this: high-value target, heavily armed protection, medical personnel on site, extreme threat level. The kind of briefing that makes your stomach do something quiet and specific that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with respect for what you're walking into. You've been doing this for 7 years. You know what that briefing means. You eat breakfast anyway. Eggs and black beans and 2 cups of coffee so strong it makes your back teeth ache. You eat because your trainer, an American who never gave his real name, just went by Chief, told you 18 months ago during those brutal 8 months of joint exercises, eat when you can, sleep when you can, because you never know when the next chance comes. You never forgot that. You eat, you check your gear for the 4th time, you get in the truck. You don't pray. You used to. You stopped somewhere around your 3rd operation, not because you lost faith, but because it started to feel like a negotiation you had no right to make. You go anyway. Here's something people don't understand about Mexican soldiers. They think the army and the cartels are 2 separate worlds, 2 separate species of people living parallel lives that never touch except in violence. That's not how it works. Not in Michoacan, where you're from. Not in the towns where the cartel is the economy and the army is the thing that comes occasionally to remind everyone that the government still theoretically exists. You grew up in a town where men you went to school with went into the CJNG, not because they were evil, though some of them got there eventually, but because the cartel paid in a week what your father earned in a month cutting sugarcane. It's not complicated when you're 17 and your family needs a roof that doesn't leak. You chose differently. Your mother cried when you enlisted, not from pride, from fear. There's a difference. She knew what the army meant in Michoacan. She knew you were signing up to eventually stand across from men she probably recognized from the market, from church, from the school pickup line. You knew it too. You went anyway. 7 years ago, and somewhere in those 7 years, in the operations, the training, the promotions, the joint exercises with Americans who spoke Spanish with Texan accents, you stopped thinking about what could have been different and started thinking about what needs to be done. Today, this is what needs to be done. The town of Tapalpa sits about 2 hours southwest of Guadalajara, up in the mountains where the air is clean and the pine trees are so thick they block the sun by mid-morning. It's the kind of town tourists visit for the colonial architecture and the artisan cheese. Quiet, postcard pretty. The kind of place where a man who needs to disappear might think nobody would think to look. Your convoy arrives before dawn. 12 vehicles, special forces, coordinated with National Guard units already in position. The intelligence your commanders received, built partly from U.S. surveillance, from what the American embassy will later confirm was complementary intelligence provided through bilateral cooperation, is solid. The kind of solid where the question isn't if, but when, and what he does when you arrive. You know the compound has armored vehicles. You know it has rocket launchers. You were briefed on that specifically, because a cartel that has shot at military helicopters before will absolutely use everything it has when you come knocking. You know there is at least 1 medical professional on site, which is unusual, which is a detail that means something without your commanders having to explain what it means. High-value target, medical personnel on site, extreme threat level. You know. Here's what they don't show in the movies. The part before it starts, the last 3 minutes of silence before everything goes loud, is the most real you will ever feel in your entire life. Every sense sharpens to a point. You can smell the pine trees. You can hear your own heartbeat the way you normally only hear it underwater. The cold mountain air of Jalisco is coming through the truck window, and it smells like nothing else, like altitude and morning and pine resin and wood smoke from somewhere. You think about your daughter. She's 4. She was still asleep when you left 2 days ago for the staging area. You kissed her forehead, and she didn't wake up. just made a small sound and rolled over, and that small sound has been sitting in your chest ever since, a tiny warm thing you carry like a talisman, and then the radio crackles with a single word in code, and the warmth gets tucked away somewhere safe, and you move.
It starts immediately. There is no warning, no standoff, no negotiation. There never is with CJNG, and you knew there wouldn't be. His guards are former military, some of them, trained by the same system that trained you, which means they know exactly what your approach patterns look like, and they are waiting. The first shots come from the northern side of the compound, then from the roof, then from a position in the tree line to your left that nobody expected, which means someone got there early, which means the intelligence had a gap, which means you adapt right now or you don't adapt at all. You adapt. Your team moves in the way 8 months of SEAL-assisted training carved into your muscle memory. Not thought, not decision, just execution. Position, cover, communicate, move. Your breath comes in controlled bursts. Your hands do what they've done 10,000 times in drills. 4 people are killed at the location. 3 more, including the target himself, are wounded. 3 of your fellow soldiers go down with wounds. You don't know the full count yet. In the field, you only know your immediate perimeter, your immediate team, the immediate threat. You keep moving until there is no more movement to make. And then it's over. The way these things end, not with a dramatic moment, not with a speech, but with a sudden drop in the noise level, a settling, like a storm that runs out of weather. 2 arrested, several dead at the location, armored vehicles, rocket launchers, and other arms seized, and 1 man, wounded badly, loaded into a medical helicopter. You find out who it is the same way you find out most things in this work, from someone else's face. Your colonel walks past you toward the helicopter landing zone, and his face does something you've seen only twice in 7 years of working under him. It goes very still, not blank, still, like a man who has just been handed something so heavy he needs a moment to figure out how to carry it. You put it together before anyone says the word out loud. The failing kidneys, the doctor on site, the compound in Tapalpa, a town where, you remember now, one of his cartel's businesses was sanctioned a decade ago, a rental cabin operation, a place that meant something to him specifically, the scale of the protection, the rocket launchers, El Mencho. 59 years old, born in Aguililla, Michoacán, the same state as you, 30 kilometers from where your mother lives right now, a man who picked avocados as a boy, dropped out of school, crossed illegally into the United States in the 1980s, got arrested, got deported, and came back and built the most powerful drug cartel in Mexico from the wreckage of someone else's organization. He was wounded during the raid into Tapalpa and died while being flown to Mexico City. He never made it to the capital alive. On the helicopter back, you watch what's happening below you, and you try to hold 2 things in your head at the same time. The first thing, you did it. The Mexican Special Forces, trained and coordinated with American intelligence support, just took out the most wanted man in Mexico and one of the most wanted humans on the planet. A $15 million American bounty, a 300 million peso Mexican bounty, 15 years of manhunts and near misses and spectacular failures. And today, on a Sunday morning in the mountains of Jalisco, it ended. The second thing, cars burned by cartel members are blocking roads in nearly a dozen Mexican states. Jalisco, a state scheduled to host 4 World Cup matches in June, is now watching fires burn across Puerto Vallarta. Guadalajara has turned into a ghost town. Schools are canceled Monday in several states. Southwest, Alaska, and Delta Airlines have canceled flights to and from Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. An active shooter situation is reported at Guadalajara International Airport. The U.S. Embassy has issued a shelter-in-place warning for American citizens across multiple Mexican states. The CJNG said for years, "Touch him and we burn the country." And they were telling the truth. You land, you debrief, you eat something from a vending machine because it's been 11 hours since the eggs and black beans, and your body is sending insistent animal signals that have nothing to do with how historic today was. Someone puts a phone in front of you. News alerts filling the screen. AP, CNN, NBC, PBS, the BBC. El Mencho killed. Mexico's most wanted drug lord is dead. CJNG leader falls in Jalisco operation. The whole world knows within hours what took 15 years to make happen. You hand the phone back. You think about your daughter, still 4, still small enough that she'll probably sleep through the news alerts, through the history being made, through whatever her father was a part of today. You'll call home when the communications blackout lifts. You'll hear her voice and she'll say, "Papa," the way she says it, like it's 2 separate words, 2 separate small joys, and you will not tell her where you've been or what you did. She'll know someday, maybe, or she won't, and that'll be fine too. What you do know, sitting in a debriefing room in Jalisco while your country burns and reorganizes and figures out what comes next, while cartel lieutenants across Mexico are already doing the math on who fills the vacuum, while the president calls for calm and the Americans call it a great development for the world, is this. He came from the same dirt as you, the same mountains, the same poverty, the same Mexico that never made anything easy for the people who grew up in it. He picked a direction, you picked a direction, and today, in the pine-scented cold of a Jalisco morning, those 2 directions met at the end of their road. You did your job. Now the harder part begins, living with it.